Ethan had been on Kithra for almost 3 weeks, and every day felt like stepping deeper into a world he was not made for. The air was heavier than Earth's, tinged with a faint metallic scent, and the sky shimmered in colors that humans could barely name. Tall, angular towers stretched into the clouds, their surfaces gleaming with light that shifted with the sun's strange angles. The city below was alive with creatures of all shapes and sizes, moving in ways that seemed impossible to the human eye. Ethan adjusted his backpack and tightened the straps of his utility belt. His mission was simple on paper: observe, record, and report. But in practice, it was far more complicated. The Xylarans were advanced beyond imagination, with technology that could manipulate gravity, bend energy, and read subtle biological signals. Humans were weak in comparison, but Ethan knew that intelligence, patience, and observation were human strengths. That was what he had to rely on. He moved carefully through the market district, keeping his eyes low and his hands close to his body. The market was a maze of stalls and platforms, with vendors calling out in the high, melodic tones of the Xylaran language. Holographic signs floated in the air, advertising everything from food that could adapt to taste preferences, to energy crystals that pulsed like captured stars. Ethan kept his focus on the mission. He was here to gather information without drawing attention to himself. As he turned a corner, he collided with a small figure. "Oh!" Ethan exclaimed instinctively, catching the figure before she fell entirely. The girl was tiny by Xylaran standards, with pale blue skin and wide, golden eyes that stared at him in alarm. Her hair shimmered in a soft silver, falling like a waterfall down her back. She seemed fragile, almost ethereal, and yet there was a tension in her small frame, a hint of strength waiting to be unleashed. I'm sorry," she stammered in a soft, trembling voice. Ethan held her steady. "It's okay. Are you hurt?" The girl shook her head, but in her panic she stepped back awkwardly and tripped again. Ethan tried to move aside, but before he could react, she lost her balance completely and landed, sitting down abruptly on his lap. The impact was sudden, and Ethan felt a strange pressure, a weight that was more than her size should allow. "Wait, are you okay?" he asked, unsure what to do. I didn't mean to," she cried, scrambling to get up. But in her fluster she somehow shifted her weight back onto him, accidentally pressing down more firmly. Ethan froze. There was something odd. He couldn't feel it fully, but he sensed a change in the air, a faint pulse that he couldn't explain. The girl looked around wildly, her golden eyes wide with embarrassment. I didn't know." Ethan kept his voice calm. "It's fine, really. No harm done." He carefully guided her to stand, making sure she didn't stumble again. As soon as she was upright, she stepped back, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her face was flushed with a color that humans would call pink, though it shimmered with an alien hue. I'm Lyra," she said softly. "Ethan," he replied, nodding politely. They stood in silence for a moment. Ethan wanted to ask more, to understand why the brief contact had felt strange, but he knew better than to probe too deeply. The Xylarans were private, and subtle biological signals could be misinterpreted as threats or alliances. Lyra's gaze lingered on him for a moment before she bolted, weaving through the crowd like a fleeting shadow. Ethan watched her go, feeling the odd pulse of energy fade slowly. He didn't understand it, but instinct told him that something had changed, something important. He tried to focus on his mission, walking deeper into the market, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The crowd felt thicker now, and he noticed figures moving just at the edge of his vision. They weren't hiding well. Xylarans didn't need to, but they were careful, deliberate, observing him from a distance. Meanwhile, Lyra stumbled into a quieter alley, leaning against a wall to catch her breath. Her heart raced. She didn't understand what had just happened. Humans were different, she had been told, strange, weak, and unpredictable. And yet, when she had fallen onto him, she felt something she couldn't name. A warmth, a connection, a pull that seemed to reach into her very core. She replayed the incident in her mind over and over. One moment she had been walking, the next she had tripped, and then contact. Her species had known for centuries about certain rare biological reactions, signals that bonded one being to another, but these were supposed to occur only between Xylarans, never humans. And yet something had happened. Back in the market, Ethan navigated carefully, taking note of the subtle ways Xylarans moved. Their attention to detail was extraordinary. Every shift of weight, every glance, every micro-expression was loaded with meaning. Humans were clumsy in comparison, but their unpredictability could be advantageous. Ethan smiled faintly to himself. That unpredictability might be the key. He didn't notice the tall figure stepping from the shadows of a nearby building, watching him with sharp, analytical eyes. The figure's skin was darker, more metallic, and its eyes glowed faintly with intelligence. This was not a random observer. It was an elder, someone with authority and knowledge beyond the ordinary Xylaran citizen. And they had noticed the brief, accidental incident between Ethan and Lyra. Lyra didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small room, replaying the moment in her mind, wondering what it meant. She could still feel the faint echo of contact, as if a tiny thread connected her to Ethan. She touched her chest, where her heartbeat thrummed wildly. Was it curiosity, fear, something else entirely? She didn't know. Ethan, meanwhile, set up his temporary observation post in a small, abandoned warehouse at the edge of the market district. He began reviewing his notes, recording observations about Xylaran behavior, technology, and social patterns. But he found himself distracted, thinking about the incident with Lyra. He could not explain it scientifically. There was no data, no precedent, but he felt watched, not by cameras or sensors, but by something more subtle, something biological. The next day, Ethan returned to the market, hoping to continue his observations. He kept his distance, careful not to draw attention. But Lyra appeared again, cautiously peeking from behind a stall. Their eyes met, and for a moment she froze. She wasn't supposed to approach humans. The elders had strict rules about interactions, yet she couldn't resist. Ethan waved gently, not wanting to startle her. She stepped forward hesitantly. I wanted to make sure you were okay," she said quietly. "I'm fine," Ethan replied. "Thank you." A silence fell between them, filled with unspoken questions. Lyra's pulse quickened. She could feel it again, the thread connecting them. It was faint but unmistakable. She didn't understand why it existed, only that it did, and it frightened and fascinated her all at once. Without realizing it, Lyra's friends had begun to notice her behavior. Whispers followed her through the market, small groups pointing and murmuring. Humans were rare, yes, but the bond she had unknowingly formed was extraordinary. The rumors spread quickly among her peers. A human had triggered something that should have been impossible. Ethan noticed the subtle change in the atmosphere. Citizens glanced at him more frequently, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. He didn't know why, but he sensed that the accidental contact with Lyra had changed something in the social fabric of the city. Something ancient, something that had lain dormant until that moment. By mid-afternoon, Ethan had gathered enough data to plan his next move. He needed to understand the bond, but he also needed to protect both himself and Lyra. The last thing he wanted was for her to get in trouble because of his presence. Meanwhile, Lyra returned to her quarters, nervous and contemplative. Her mind raced. Humans were unpredictable, capable, and strangely resilient. She had always assumed they were weak, fragile creatures, but Ethan had proven otherwise, not through strength, but through calm, careful thinking and unexpected courage. Later, as night fell over Kithra, the city lit up with bioluminescent energy lines that ran along the streets and buildings. Ethan sat on the roof of the warehouse, observing the patterns below. The city was alive, aware, and watching. Somewhere in the shadows, figures stirred, Elders whispered in quiet chambers, and the thread between him and Lyra pulsed faintly, unnoticed but powerful. Neither of them knew it yet, but the simple accident, the brief moment when Lyra had sat on him, had triggered a series of events that could change the relationship between humans and Xylarans forever. Ethan didn't sleep that night either. His thoughts kept returning to Lyra, to the connection he couldn't sense fully, and to the feeling that something ancient and powerful had just awakened, something that would not be ignored. And somewhere deep within the city, the elders whispered to each other, voices low and urgent. The human, he is different. He may be the one. Lyra, trembling in her room, and Ethan, alone on the rooftop, had no idea what the next days would bring. But one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The sun rose over Kithra, painting the city in shades of violet and gold. Ethan moved cautiously through the narrow streets of the market district, his senses alert. The previous day's events replayed in his mind over and over. The accidental contact with Lyra had been brief, but its effects were anything but ordinary. He felt a subtle change in the energy around him. Something had awakened, something he did not fully understand. Lyra, meanwhile, could not focus on her daily routine. Her friends noticed her distraction, whispering among themselves. Her small gestures betrayed a curiosity that she had never experienced before, a pull toward Ethan she could neither name nor ignore. Though she feared the attention of the elders and her own uncertainty about humans, she found herself moving closer to him when she could, observing his actions from a distance. The bond, whatever it was growing stronger. Ethan noticed subtle signs too. Small things that he could not explain. A sense of being watched, the faint echo of Lyra's presence when she was nearby, the way animals and creatures around them seemed to respond differently when they were together. He kept careful notes, noting that humans and Xylarans had always interacted cautiously, but that something new, something unique, was happening. Ethan decided he needed more understanding. The accidental incident had revealed the existence of a connection, but he needed to learn whether it was dangerous or advantageous. He moved with purpose through the bustling streets, scanning for any signs of observers. It was not long before he felt the subtle eyes of Xylaran scientists upon him, their movements deliberate but almost invisible to most. They were studying him, not as a threat but as something unique. Lyra, too, began her own cautious observations. She followed him from a distance, hiding behind stalls and moving through shadows. Each moment she watched Ethan, she felt the bond grow stronger. She sensed his intelligence, his calmness under pressure, and a quiet courage that humans seemed to possess naturally. She realized that humans were unpredictable in ways her species could not comprehend, yet these qualities gave them an unexpected power. The two met again in the afternoon. Lyra had summoned her courage and approached Ethan in a quiet alley away from the crowds. Her golden eyes flickered with nervous energy as she spoke. I wanted to know why you didn't react badly yesterday. Most humans would have, I don't know, reacted poorly. Ethan smiled faintly. I have training, and humans can surprise you. Sometimes it's better to stay calm and observe. Lyra studied him for a long moment. You are very different. So are you, Ethan replied. You are stronger than you look and braver than you think. They talked cautiously, sharing small details about their lives. Ethan learned that Lyra was young by Xylaran standards, curious about the world beyond her city, and eager to understand humans despite warnings from her elders. Lyra learned that humans could adapt, plan, and improvise in ways her species could not, and that Ethan's mind was a valuable resource. As the day progressed, they began to notice changes in their environment. Creatures that had ignored Ethan before now seemed to move aside, sensing the subtle bond between him and Lyra. Other Xylarans looked at them with curiosity, whispering in low tones. It became clear that the accidental incident had attracted attention far beyond their immediate awareness. Ethan realized they were being followed. Not in an obvious way, but with subtle movements, figures shifting in the periphery, heads turning just slightly too often. "We're being watched," he said quietly. "I don't think it's dangerous yet, but we need to be careful." Lyra nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. "Do you think it is because of what happened yesterday?" "I think so," Ethan replied. "You triggered something in your species that is rare. I don't know what it means yet, but it's important. We have to be smart about it." Together, they began to explore the implications. The bond was not just emotional or social. It seemed to have a subtle influence on biology and perception. Ethan noticed that when Lyra was near, his senses were sharper, and he could predict movement more accurately. Lyra found that her strength and reflexes seemed slightly enhanced when he was present. Neither could explain it scientifically, but the results were undeniable. As they navigated the city, they encountered a faction of Xylaran scientists who approached them under the guise of offering assistance. Their leader, an older Xylaran with metallic blue skin and sharp eyes, spoke with a calm, measured tone. "You are unusual," he said to Ethan. "Most humans cannot interact with our species in this way. There is a rare compatibility here that warrants study." Ethan remained polite but cautious. "I don't want to cause trouble. I'm just here to observe." The scientist's eyes flicked to Lyra. "And yet you have formed a connection with her. That is significant." Lyra stepped forward, feeling the pulse of the bond between them. She didn't understand why it existed, only that it did, and that it was growing stronger. The scientist's words only confirmed her suspicions. The bond was unusual, and the implications were far-reaching. Over the next few days, Ethan and Lyra worked together to understand the bond's effects. They conducted small experiments in private, observing reactions of Xylaran creatures, noting changes in perception, and testing strength and reflexes. Each discovery confirmed that humans and Xylarans could interact in ways that were previously thought impossible. Yet the attention from the elders grew. Whispers of the ancient bond began to circulate, and some factions viewed it as a threat. Others saw opportunity. Ethan understood that they were entering dangerous territory, not physically, but socially and politically. The wrong move could endanger both him and Lyra. One afternoon, while exploring an abandoned observation tower, Ethan and Lyra were confronted by a small patrol of Xylaran guards. "You are not authorized to be here," one of them said, his voice sharp. Ethan remained calm. "We are simply observing. We mean no harm." Lyra stepped slightly in front of him, her eyes glowing faintly. She did not understand why, but she felt compelled to protect him. The guards hesitated, sensing the subtle strength of the bond. Something about Ethan and Lyra together radiated authority and power that humans or Xylarans alone could not match. After a tense moment, the guards retreated, whispering to each other about the strange connection. The incident made Ethan realize that the bond was more than a curiosity. It was a strategic advantage. Humans, usually weaker in physical strength, could now interact with Xylaran biology and society in ways that could change the balance of power. Lyra, once fearful and shy, now embraced her role as ally and protector, her trust in Ethan deepening. As the days turned into a week, their partnership strengthened. They explored hidden corners of the city, avoided the more suspicious factions, and uncovered subtle political tensions among the Xylarans. Some saw humans as tools, others as threats. But Ethan and Lyra discovered that together, they could influence outcomes, diffuse conflicts, and even solve problems that Xylarans had struggled with for years. One evening, Lyra confided in Ethan. "I never thought I would feel this way about a human. I don't understand it." Ethan nodded. "Neither did I, but sometimes the impossible happens, and when it does, you have to use it wisely." Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, subtle but undeniable. The accidental incident, the moment Lyra had sat on him, had unleashed a series of events that neither of them could have predicted. They were becoming a team, a unique combination of human ingenuity and Xylaran ability, capable of achieving things that neither species could do alone. But danger was never far away. Factions that sought to control humans for their own gain began to maneuver against them. Ethan and Lyra realized that their actions would have consequences far beyond their understanding. The elders were watching more closely, and whispers of rebellion, opportunity, and danger spread through the city like wildfire. One night, as they rested on the roof of an old observation tower, the city below lit up with streams of bioluminescent light. Lyra's hand brushed against Ethan's accidentally, and a pulse of energy ran through them both. The bond had strengthened again, reacting to proximity and trust. "We have to be careful," Ethan said softly. "This bond, it is powerful, but not everyone will see it as a gift." Lyra nodded, her golden eyes reflecting the city lights. "I understand, but I trust you. I want to help you. We can figure this out together." And together they began to plan. They would explore the limits of the bond, uncover the hidden factions, and find a way to use their unique connection to bring understanding, and perhaps peace, between humans and Xylarans. But the city never slept, and danger was always near. Somewhere in the shadows, the elders whispered to each other. The human was different, yes, but different could be dangerous. And the bond between Lyra and Ethan had already set off ripples that would reach far beyond their understanding. The story of the accidental incident, the moment Lyra had sat on him, was no longer just a simple mistake. It had become the beginning of something far larger, a human influence that could change the course of Xylaran society forever. The city of Kythera glimmered under the twin moons, their light reflecting off the sharp, metallic surfaces of the towering buildings. Ethan and Lyra moved cautiously through the crowded streets, their senses alert. The days since the accidental incident had shown them that their bond was more than a curiosity. It was a rare force that could influence both biology and perception in ways no one had anticipated. And now, it seemed, their connection had drawn the attention of forces far beyond anything they had imagined. The elders who had observed the subtle bond grow were divided. Some saw it as a threat, a dangerous anomaly that must be separated or controlled. Others saw an opportunity to harness its potential, believing that humans, despite their physical limitations, could offer insights and advantages that Xylarans had long overlooked. Ethan and Lyra had become symbols of possibility, but also targets for factions that wanted control. Ethan glanced at Lyra, who walked beside him, her golden eyes alert and cautious. "We need to move carefully," he said. "They're watching us more closely now." Lyra nodded. "I know, but we can't hide forever. If this bond is as important as it seems, we have to understand it, and maybe even use it to help." Their first stop was an old observation tower at the edge of the city. The structure was abandoned and largely forgotten, but it offered a clear view of the surrounding districts. From there, they could see patterns in the city's movements, subtle signals of political tension, and the shifting presence of the elders' agents. It was their safest place to plan, at least for now. Ethan studied the data they had collected over the past week. Observations of Xylaran behavior, responses of creatures to their presence, and patterns in political movements all pointed to one conclusion. Their bond gave humans a unique advantage. Humans could inspire trust, provoke responses, and influence outcomes in ways Xylarans could not. It was subtle, almost invisible to the casual observer, but undeniable when measured carefully. Lyra leaned against the railing, watching the city below. "I never imagined humans could be like this. You see things differently, you adapt quickly. You're unpredictable," Ethan smiled faintly. "That's what I'm good at. Observation, adaptation, problem solving. Humans aren't always strong, but we think differently. That can be more important than muscle." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden movement below. A patrol of Xylaran guards was moving quickly through the streets, scanning the area. Ethan and Lyra exchanged a glance. The elders had decided to act. "We can't stay here," Ethan said, already moving toward the stairwell. "We need to stay ahead of them." They descended quickly, moving through hidden alleys and abandoned passages. The city, for all its complexity, offered them enough cover to stay just out of sight. Lyra's instincts and speed were invaluable, and Ethan's careful planning kept them one step ahead. Their bond seemed to guide them subtly, an invisible thread that enhanced reflexes and awareness. As they moved, Ethan considered their options. They could flee the city entirely, but that would leave the bond unexplored and its potential wasted. They needed to understand it fully, and they needed to do it quickly before the factions that opposed them could intervene. Their first challenge came when they reached the market district. A crowd had gathered for a festival, unaware of the tension beneath the surface. The noise, the lights, and the movement offered cover, but also danger. Any misstep could reveal them to the wrong eyes. Ethan signaled to Lyra, and they moved through the crowd, blending in. It was here that the true advantage of the bond became clear. Humans, unlike Xylarans, could improvise and adapt in real time. When a patrol of guards turned a corner unexpectedly, Ethan shifted slightly, and Lyra responded instinctively, moving in a coordinated way that no one else could replicate. The patrol passed without noticing them, and they continued through the festival, hearts racing but unharmed. Finally, they reached a secluded plaza far from the main thoroughfares. Here, they paused to catch their breath and plan their next move. The bond between them pulsed faintly, a subtle signal that neither fully understood but both could sense. It was more than connection, it was guidance, enhancing their awareness and abilities. "We can't keep running forever," Lyra said quietly. "If we want to understand this, we have to face the elders. We have to show them that we can make a difference." Ethan nodded. "I agree, but we need a plan. If we confront them unprepared, it could be dangerous. We have to use what we've learned." The next day, they began to put their plan into action. Using their combined knowledge, they navigated to the central council chamber, a massive structure filled with holographic displays and observation windows. The chamber was crowded with elders and scientists, all aware of their approach. Ethan stepped forward, Lyra beside him. The room fell silent. "We come not as intruders," Ethan said calmly, "but as partners. The bond between Lyra and me is rare, yes, but it shows that humans and Xylarans can achieve things together that neither could alone." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some elders were skeptical, others curious. One elder, with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed faintly, spoke. "You speak boldly, human. But do you understand what you are suggesting? That a human could influence Xylaran biology and society? That is unprecedented." "I understand it," Ethan replied, "and I believe it can be used for good. Humans are not the strongest, but we are clever, adaptable, and capable of innovation. This bond shows what can happen when our strengths combine with yours." Lyra added, her voice steady, "I feel it too. The connection is real. It enhances both of us. It is not dangerous if we use it wisely." The chamber fell silent again, the weight of their words sinking in. The elders deliberated, their whispers echoing through the room. Finally, the silver-skinned elder spoke. "We will test this. If what you claim is true, humans may have a place among us, not as servants, but as partners. This is unprecedented, but perhaps it is time for change." Over the next few days, Ethan and Lyra participated in controlled tests. The results confirmed their theories. The bond allowed them to coordinate actions seamlessly, enhanced perception, and even subtly influenced the reactions of other Xylarans. It was not magic, it was science, a unique interaction that combined human adaptability with Xylaran physiology. Word of their success spread through the city. Humans, once seen as weak and limited, began to earn respect. Ethan demonstrated ingenuity in problem-solving, while Lyra's support showed that humans could work alongside Xylarans effectively. Slowly, distrust began to shift to curiosity, and curiosity to cautious admiration. Yet the danger was not gone. A faction of elders who opposed the bond plotted to separate them, fearing the implications for their society. Ethan and Lyra had to act quickly to prevent interference. Using their combined skills, they uncovered the faction's plans and presented evidence to the council, showing that the bond was stable, beneficial, and could strengthen Xylaran society. The climax came when the opposing faction attempted to seize control of the council chamber during a critical vote. Ethan and Lyra, anticipating the move, coordinated their actions with precision. Lyra's agility and strength complemented Ethan's strategic thinking. Together, they neutralized the threat without harm, using non-lethal methods and intelligence to outmaneuver their opponents. The council witnessed their cooperation and effectiveness firsthand. The faction opposing the bond was overruled, and the decision was made. Humans would no longer be considered weak outsiders, but potential partners in Xylaran progress. Ethan and Lyra had proven that the accidental incident, the moment she had sat on him, was not just a mistake but the catalyst for a new era. As the council adjourned, Lyra looked at Ethan. "We did it," she said softly, relief and pride in her voice. Ethan smiled. "We did. And this is just the beginning. Humans and Xylarans can do amazing things together." The city of Kithra, once filled with uncertainty and fear, now buzzed with the possibilities of cooperation. Humans were recognized as clever, resourceful, and capable of surprising achievements. The accidental bond between Ethan and Lyra had not only changed their lives, but had also shifted the perception of an entire species. As night fell, Ethan and Lyra stood together on the roof of the council building, looking out over the city. The twin moons reflected in the towers, casting long shadows and pools of soft light. The bond between them pulsed faintly, a reminder of how a single moment, an accident, had sparked something extraordinary. "We never would have imagined it," Lyra said, her voice full of wonder. "A human could change everything." Ethan nodded. Sometimes the smallest things can have the biggest impact, and humans were full of surprises. They watched the city below, knowing that their journey was far from over. But for now, they had shown the Xylarans the value of human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. And in doing so, they had proven that even the most accidental moments could set off events that changed the course of history. The accidental incident that started it all, the moment Lyra had sat on him, would be remembered not as a mistake, but as the spark that ignited a bond between two species, a bond that could shape the future of an entire world. And as Ethan and Lyra stood side by side, they knew that together, humans and Xylarans could achieve the impossible.